on a shoe, and let's take a look at all of the issues that involve vision loss. First of all, we're going to review the definition of visual impairment. There are two major areas when we talk about legal blindness. The definition is based on one's visual acuity and your field of vision. A person whose visual acuity is 20 or 200 or less is actually considered legally blind. 2200 means if you stand at 20 feet to see what a normally sighted person can see at 200 feet. So in other words, you have to be much closer to see a particular object. Visual acuity means your ability to see clearly to distinguish forms and details at a specific distance. Now, your field of vision is a little bit different. This is the expanse of space visible with both eyes looking straight ahead. It's measured in degrees. For example, most of us can see about 170 to 180 degrees of peripheral vision. Now, when you bring that in, a more restricted field of vision is called tunnel vision. And so that would be restricted to an area of 20 degrees or less, is considered legally blind. Now, IDEA has a definition of a visual impairment, and they emphasize the relationship between vision and learning. And so when we're totally blind, we're not getting information through the sense of vision, and so we would need to adjust learning activities based on that information. What are our instructional goals and teaching methods? Functional blindness means that we learn primarily through the auditory channel, and then low vision means that we use our vision as our primary means of learning. The age of the vision loss will have implications on how we should teach an individual. For example, if you were blind from birth or congenitally blind, you would have different learning strategies versus if you had adventitious or acquired blindness, you had some history of vision and then you lost your sight. So if you had adventitious blindness, you might have seen things like the color blue, or perhaps what a deer looks like, or newly budded trees. Those kinds of visual images you could then refer back to, versus someone who was blind at birth may not have those some of those references. And so you would learn some different ways to teach. I think about the idea of African animals that we don't have here, obviously in Wisconsin. How would you teach someone who's never seen a rhinoceros what a rhinoceros would look like? Well, if you were congenitally blind, you might have a model of a rhinoceros and maybe feel something like wrinkled skin or leathery skin, and then feel the shape of a rhinoceros from a small model. If you were adventitiously blind, you might have even seen a rhinoceros on television, and you would have that image. So really it's going to change how you would present information. There are different characteristics of people who have vision loss. Now remember, one size does not fit all. So what I want to give you is some general ideas. There might be some difficulty with connecting information and language, because of absent vision might make it difficult to see connections between experiences, and we might need to find some different ways to make those connections for that person. A child with a visual impairment may have some deficits in motor development and exploratory learning, so we would want to encourage moving towards sound and all kinds of tactile experiences. Also, a child may have delayed social skills if they're not given opportunity. So the biggest difficulty socially is the attitudes and behaviors of other people around those children, not including them, ignoring them, things like that. So what we want to do is look at attitudinal barriers and reduce those. There are many different causes of blindness. It's not very prevalent. Fewer than 2 in 1,000 have a visual impairment. There are many different kinds of visual impairments. I'm going to refer you to the table in your book. I'm going to just outline a few of these here for you on the slide. You could have things like nearsightedness and farsightedness to a large extent that would cause a significant visual impairment. Or perhaps you have some structural impairments. Many of you might know someone that has cataracts or glaucoma. Perhaps there's some kind of cortical visual impairment. Maybe there's a part of your brain that's been damaged, or there's been a tumor or a brain injury that's actually impacted your ability to interpret visual information. Maybe you have retinitis pigmentosa, which is a inherited disease process that affects one part of the the rods in the eyes, causing night blindness, tunnel vision, and then eventual vision loss. Perhaps you have vision loss due to diabetes, which is quite common. The back of the retina has some hemorrhaging that leads to blindness. Or perhaps macular degeneration, which is very common in our elder population, and that's when the central area of the retina gradually deteriorates, and so they have vision loss in the middle of the field of vision and then vision around the edges. There are many different educational approaches that one might use to help someone who's blind or visually impaired. Of course, you think automatically of Braille. Well, what you might not know about Braille is that there's different types. Grade 1 Braille is like your ABCs. Well, if you had to have every word spelled out in Braille with ABCs, you'd be carrying around a book in a wagon. It would be absolutely huge. So there is something called Grade 2 Braille, and Grade 2 Braille is an abbreviated version of Braille, kind of like a shorthand. So in the Braille cell, you might have one dot that means a certain word, so you can tighten it up. For example, the letter K in Grade 2 Braille means knowledge. It means the whole word knowledge. So you can shorten that down to one letter. So what a person needs to do to learn Grade 2 Braille is to learn contractions. There are 189 contractions in Grade 2 Braille. So in other words, a prefix and a suffix might be abbreviated. So a prefix might be PRE, or an ending might be ING, and those have shortened contractions. So we can reduce the size of the Braille and you can read much faster. By the way, a proficient Braille reader is just as fast, if not faster, than a person who can read with sight. Grade 3 Braille is a specialized Braille. So that might be something like a Braille for math. There's actual Braille for music notation, Braille for computer science notation. So again, Grade 3 Braille is a specialized Braille. Maybe you need a tactile aid or manipulatives, perhaps a tactile map, a tactile globe. Another idea that is very, very helpful is computer technology. There are softwares that will actually read everything on the screen, and that is extremely helpful. So you have complete internet access. Your smartphones have also are accessible by speech. Anything that you touch on the flat screen will read aloud. There's software that can also convert your text files to a synthesized speech. You could scan, say, your mail, and it would read it aloud to you. So some excellent technologies, and those are always getting better. Unfortunately, the technologies I'm talking about, the tactile aids such as tactile maps, computer software, um, digital books that you can listen to and download, those are all not covered by insurance, and these things cost money. So those of you that are in the human services field will be looking for monies to help individuals with these technologies. If a person has functional vision, then we would work with how to use that vision to the maximum extent possible. So for example, we would want to optimize vision with glasses. Sometimes a person would have contact lenses and glasses. There are very small handheld telescopes that are extremely powerful. Different kinds of magnifiers that one might use, some little portable magnifiers. There are desktop magnifiers that can magnify things such as, say, a prescription label on a bottle, mail. You can put that under there. Maybe even threading a needle. You can put a needle and thread underneath a magnifier and see that kind of, and be able to do some tasks. There's something called Zoom Text, which is a text magnifier for your computer screen that will magnify up portions of the screen so you can adjust it. There are some low-tech adaptations also, like perhaps we do enlarged print. Maybe we need a magnifier, a small magnifier over the top of your print materials. Perhaps we need a special lamp, different kind of lighting, off-white paper even. Some people get a glare from the paper, so a tan paper or a light blue paper would be a very good accommodation. Perhaps tilting the tabletop so that the light is not glaring might be beneficial. One might even have preferential seating in front of the classroom as an adaptation. Now, you might think too of dog guides. And so a student might need orientation and mobility training. So where am I at and how do I get there? Now, most people use cane skills. People that are blind most of the time need this orientation and mobility so that they can be independent. And one would start off in an area familiar to them and then say, for example, your home, and then move out to your neighborhood, then move out to the community. Students in the school setting would need orientation to the classrooms, to the cafeteria and entrances and so forth. Mobility would include how to use a cane. Now, dog guides are used later on in life, usually after the age of 18, because children, have a hard time maintaining their own discipline, let alone the discipline to have a dog. And so these dogs are highly trained animals with really strict rules as far as maintaining their training. You don't want to feed a dog after hours. You don't want to feed them table scraps. You certainly don't want to have people petting a service dog. Any of those things can undo their training. And so a dog guide, only about 10% of people that are blind have dog guides, and they're very special animals. I'm lucky enough to live with somebody who has a dog guide, and so this is actually a picture on this slide of my husband's second dog guide. And he served my husband very well for 10 years. So he's on his third dog, and we're so lucky to have him. Another way to get mobility is sighted guide, and so somebody could actually take your elbow, you would take their elbow if you were blind, and then you would walk with that individual. There's some techniques on that. Electronic travel aids, there's things like talking GPS, and those are very helpful. Using listening skills to orient yourself to your environment, very, very helpful. You would also learn how to use some different kinds of cooking tips. There's actually talking thermometers to tell you if your meat is cooked. How to take things safely out of the oven, how to prepare, just about anything that you want to make. Personal hygiene and shopping, managing your money, thinking about online banking and using a screen reader to hear your financial statements, using a debit card, using public transportation, how do you manage that, recreational activities, if you want to adapt to skiing or to, riding a bike, to jogging, all of those things, how do you adapt? My husband and I are learning to ballroom dance, and how do we adapt to that? We're doing pretty darn good. So anyway, you find your way around. Where do we place children? How do we educate children? Well, most children are educated in the public schools. Look at that, 88%. What we do need, though, is some assistance to the regular classroom teacher. Most teachers get help from itinerant teacher consultants so that they can know how to successfully include that student in the classroom activities and how to adapt materials. Other important things to consider are peer acceptance and interaction with others, making sure there's no attitudinal barriers. If there's any need for any special supplies and equipment, getting those things. There are residential schools for people with blindness. About 4% of school-age children attend those kinds of schools. We do have a school in Janesville for people that are blind that is a residential setting. So that's on the continuum of placements. Current issues, we're looking now at technology to help, what kind of computer enhancements are coming, talking GPS, any kind of technological age with computer access, making our mobile apps completely accessible, ATMs accessible, all of those kinds of things. Biomedical developments, maybe we could have a bionic chip in the eye to help with getting information to the brain to help bypass any vision problems, looking at new surgery techniques for some things, stem cell research, it's amazing. What kind of services do we need? Mostly looking at inclusion, changing the focus on early intervention, including people in full range of community activities. Another thing that might be coming is artificial sight, and we are definitely working on that. I think the main thing that we're looking at is fighting against discrimination and for self-determination for people that are blind. Blindness is one of the most feared disabilities, and there are a lot of myths about what a person can and cannot do. And so there's a tremendous amount of public education that's needed. Unfortunately, the unemployment rate for someone that's blind, ranges 80–90%, which is really sad. So I hope that this information helps you in understanding a little bit